Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive shift in enterprise AI, moving from those rigid single-agent setups you're probably used to fully governed multi-agent workflows. Look, if you spent any time building AI for the enterprise recently, you already know that getting a language model to answer a basic question, super easy. But getting it to navigate complex, multi-step business processes without hallucinating or, completely blowing up your compliance rules, yeah, that's the real headache we're solving today.
So here is our roadmap for this journey. First, we're moving beyond single AI agents. Second, we'll break down the master orchestrator pattern. Third, we're actually building it out in Snowflake Cortex. Fourth, we'll tackle the hidden risk of governance. And finally, we'll solve that risk with automated AI traceability. Let's jump right in.
All right, part one, beyond single AI agents. Let's get right into exactly why cramming every single instruction into one isolated AI agent is basically hitting a brick wall in complex enterprise environments.
When you force a single agent to do absolutely everything, it totally loses its specialized context. It gets overwhelmed by massive instructions and processes everything sequentially. It's just a giant bottleneck waiting to happen. Multi-agent systems, on the other hand, absolutely crush single agents because they cleanly separate context. They let highly specialized tasks run in parallel, so you're no longer sitting there waiting for task A to finish just so task B can finally start.
Moving on to part two, the master orchestrator pattern. If we actually want to achieve that sweet parallel processing and eliminate those bottlenecks, this is the exact architecture we need.
Honestly, the best way to think about this is just like a well-run corporation. Imagine a CEO gets a complex request from the board. That CEO isn't going to run down to the basement to crunch the financial numbers, draft up legal docs, and write the marketing copy all by themselves, right? Obviously not. Instead, they interpret the intent of the board and they delegate that work to highly specialized departments. The master orchestrator pattern takes that exact same logic and applies it directly to AI.
So how does this actually look under the hood? The workflow is honestly a game changer. First, our master agent receives the initial prompt. Then it delegates tasks out to subagents. And here's the really cool part. By wrapping those subagents as tools and utilizing Python's threadpool executor, the master agent triggers these processes concurrently. Imagine your team needs to run, say, 5 simultaneous vendor audits. Instead of doing them one by one, waiting in line, the master agent just fires them all off in parallel. Once they're done, it grabs all those individual outputs and aggregates them into one clean, cohesive final answer.
Okay, part three, building in Snowflake Cortex. Let's take all this theory and look at a real-world setup, building it natively inside Snowflake Cortex to spin up a powerful sales intelligence assistant.
In this setup, our master agent is basically acting as a super smart traffic cop, routing between two highly specialized tools. On one side, we've got Cortex Search, which is purpose-built for unstructured data. So if a user asks a qualitative question, like, hey, summarize that TechCorp discovery call, the master agent autonomously routes that right to Cortex Search, which uses semantic search to read through the actual conversation transcripts. On the flip side, we have Cortex Analyst for structured quantitative data. If the user asks, what's our total sales volume, the agent instantly routes that to a text-to-SQL tool that reads the structured deal metrics straight from the database. It's seamless.
Now, obviously, keeping this system on the rails requires some incredibly strict guardrails. To keep hallucinations at zero, this build relies on heavy hitters like the Claude Sonnet 4.5 model. But honestly, the real magic here is in the constraints. We use rock-solid system instructions that explicitly tell the agent exactly how to route tasks. We also leverage semantic YAML models. These act as a sort of translation layer so Cortex analysts can perfectly understand the underlying SQL schema and all its weird synonyms. But the absolute most crucial piece? A hard-coded constraint saying answer only from available data. Basically, it is explicitly trained to flat-out decline off-topic questions.
Which brings us to part four, the hidden risk of governance. We've got this incredibly powerful multi-agent system humming along beautifully inside our data platform. But as these workflows speed up and operate completely autonomously, we run headfirst into a massive enterprise complication, the black box dragon.
It's literally the question that keeps chief data officers awake at 2 a.m. What is this AI actually doing with our data? Think about it. If an autonomous agent makes a critical business decision and you can't trace that decision back to the exact source tables or the specific semantic view it pulled from, how on earth can your compliance team trust it? Speed without visibility is just a massive risk. And trust me, this anxiety is completely industry-wide.
McKinsey ran a survey projecting out to 2026, and a staggering 2/3 of organizations cited security and risk as their #1 roadblock to scaling agentic AI. You simply cannot deploy these autonomous agents into a production environment if you can't prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, exactly how they operate.
That brings us to our final section, automated AI traceability. Because if the true differentiator isn't just building the AI, but governing it, we have to close this gap. And we do that by bringing in Calibra's automated AI traceability.
Calibra basically steps in and completely unpacks that black box for us by mapping out the entire lineage, end-to-end, automatically. It starts all the way back at the raw source data sets, the actual tables. Then it tracks the flow through those semantic YAML views we talked about, straight into the system prompts, the models, through the Cortex agent itself, and finally out to the AI's final output. You get absolute, crystal clear visibility into the entire lifecycle of a decision.
For compliance teams, this is a total game changer. Instead of someone trying to manually document these insanely complex pipelines, which, let's be real, is practically impossible at scale, teams get these beautiful visual lineage diagrams. Calibra automatically harvests all that technical metadata right out of Snowflake and links it directly to your governance policies, data quality scores, and ownership rules. It even does bidirectional metadata syncing, so your governance platform and your data platform are literally always in perfect harmony. And since we all know enterprises don't just use one single tool, this creates a unified cross-platform view. It weaves Snowflake, Databricks, Vertex AI, and SageMaker into one single traceability fabric, giving your compliance team the hard, verifiable evidence they actually need.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on. Orchestrating the AI, writing the Python threads, defining those semantic models, that is just table stakes now. That's only half the battle. As we dive headfirst into this agentic era, how will your enterprise actually prove that it can trust the machine? Because if your AI decisions aren't completely traceable, well, they aren't truly governed at all, are they? Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive into multi-agent AI architecture and governance. Catch you next time.